When a personal crisis inspired a global change, there are nights when a message is shorter than a breath, yet powerful enough to change the course of a life. At 2:17 a.m. under the yellow hospital lights, Hannah read it. "If you need, I can cover your night shift. Your family can stay." Hannah Cole sat on a hard plastic chair outside the emergency room, clutching a cup of cold coffee. Her 7-year-old son Ethan was inside after suddenly collapsing on the playground. The doctor said he needed to be admitted for further tests, possibly a spinal tap. Hannah nodded too quickly, as if agreeing fast enough could hold back the fear. Her phone buzzed an email from HR. "HR, we're sorry, but policy only allows for 24 hours of paid emergency leave. If you need more time, you may take unpaid leave." The words "unpaid leave" lit up like a white scar on a black screen. Rent, hospital bills. The growing stack of envelopes on her shelf, they all seemed to pull her under like thick mud. She started composing a resignation email in her head, got to the first line, then erased it. No courage for that yet. Ethan was fast asleep, his tiny hand clutching the blanket. Hannah opened her phone, thinking of writing a Facebook post asking for help, but stopped. She hated the feeling of turning pain into content. She stepped into the hallway and saw a man pushing a trash cart, sun-worn face, salt and pepper hair. He nodded at her like greeting an old friend. If only someone would say, "It's okay, stay." That sentence arrived sooner than she expected, like a pebble falling at just the right moment. The next morning on the vending machine beside Ethan's room, Hannah saw a yellow Post-it note. "If you need, I can take your night shift. My name is Miguel. I work the 3rd shift. Your family can stay. Ring the bell at room 412. Next to it were 2 cans of sweetened coffee and a pack of cookies. Hannah let out a laugh, a sudden burst like a needle, popping the balloon of fear that had been swelling inside her. She didn't accept the offer right away. Stubborn pride held her back. But when the doctor said they needed to perform a bone marrow biopsy, her knees gave way. She rang the bell. Miguel showed up. He stood shyly, holding a worn cap in his hands. "Stay," he said. "I can cover it." "Someone once did the same for me." "Who?" Hannah asked. Miguel smiled and shrugged. "A stranger. Years ago, his wife had gone into premature labor. A nurse had swapped shifts, no extra pay. Because one day she said my wife might need someone too." Miguel had believed in that strange kind of logic that only kindness dares to follow spending generosity, as if it could somehow earn interest. Hannah said thank you. It was a small thank you, like a seed beginning to sprout in the dark. That night, sitting by Ethan's hospital bed, his tiny arm tangled in IV lines, Hannah typed into her notes app. What if crisis time was a right, not a favor? Just 12 words. She didn't overthink it. She posted it on the company's internal page where people usually shared work hacks. Someone took a screenshot and posted it on Twitter, removing her name. A friend of Miguel's saw it and shared it in a local labor group chat. A lawyer saw it and turned it into a short draft policy, 72 hours of grace. Any employee facing a family crisis would automatically receive 72 hours of paid leave, no questions asked. Within 24 hours, that policy appeared at 20 small companies. 3 days later, it aired on the morning news of a local station. A week later, it landed in the mayor's inbox. Somewhere along the way, people began adding a hashtag, bridge hours, building a bridge between a person and the job that shouldn't forget their humanity. As for Hannah, she wasn't following any of it. She was too busy breathing for Ethan, too busy learning new words, leukocytes, protocol for fluids, side effects. Now and then, Miguel would stop by and quietly place a carton of milk on the table or a note with a list of places offering aid. He always signed it the same way. No one should be alone. Victor Hale, CEO of Halewell Corporation, received the Bridge Hours email on a Monday afternoon. He read it and waved it off. "Sounds emotional," he said. "But the public's paying attention, sir," his assistant replied. "And competitors are signing on." Victor had a reputation for being cold. At a press conference once he'd said, "Work is life. If you can't handle the heat, stay out of the kitchen." That line made him a symbol of tough love leadership admired by many men who feared softness. He didn't believe in the soft stuff. He believed in numbers. That night he came home late. In the kitchen, his wife Laura was leaning against the counter, her hands trembling. She tried to hide it, but he saw. It was a minor stroke. In a flash, everything shattered like a windshield hit by a rock. Victor requested time off, but his own company didn't have bridge hours. His assistant reminded him gently, "Sir, policy allows for 24 hours. Victor gave a dry laugh. "I signed that policy." He dragged himself back to his desk, started to write an email, then stopped. In the weeks that followed, he learned to change Laura's bandages, learned to button her shirt, learned how to stay silent in the face of his own cracking voice, asking himself why he had ever said those cold, clean words. For the first time in his life, Victor faced a number that didn't add up the number of hours she needed him by her side. One morning, Victor accompanied Laura to her rehab center. On the wall was a poster, "Bridge Hours, 72 Hours of Paid Leave for Family Crises." In the corner was the logo of a small nonprofit Aurora fund. Beneath the poster was a flyer, its opening line written in 12 words. "What if crisis time was a right, not a favor?" Victor stood there for a long time as if the question demanded an answer from him. Laura glanced at him. "You know," she said, her voice still slightly slurred but eyes bright, "sometimes a good question is stronger than any answer." Victor nodded. He called his assistant. "We'll fund this, anonymously." He named the fund Aurora for Laura's dawn after the storm. Not to make amends, he wasn't ready to use that word with himself, but he wanted to build a first bridge with money, with connections, with quiet phone calls to fellow CEOs at the golf club. Just try it. What do you have to lose? Other bridges followed. In Manila, a supermarket chain adopted bridge hours, and the number of unpaid leave requests dropped by 43%. In Warsaw, a startup granted bridge hours to men whose partners experienced miscarriage, something no one had talked about before. In Nairobi, bridge hours partnered with a network of community hostels near hospitals offering lodging to family members from afar. And in Ethan's hospital, Hannah received a surprise email. "Starting today, your company has adopted bridge hours, effective immediately." She laughed out loud, a sound like a door unlocking. There was no miracle cure. Ethan still needed chemotherapy. Hannah still ran downstairs twice a day for instant noodles she didn't have the energy to cook. Miguel still quietly mopped the floors occasionally, leaving slips of paper by the water cooler with addresses of local aid organizations. In the nurse's station, a whiteboard appeared covered in rainbow stickers, each one marking a new company that had signed onto bridge hours. Ethan loved those stickers. He counted them daily and said, "Mom, 2 more today." Hannah joked, "Maybe you're our lucky charm." One evening, she saw Miguel sitting at the end of the hallway, clutching his stomach and coughing. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," he said, waving her off, the kind of wave older men use when they've grown used to hurting alone. Hannah wanted to say something more than just, "Take care," but the words fled from her like they so often do in moments that matter most. The day Ethan was temporarily discharged, he peeled a green sticker from the board and pressed it onto Miguel's shirt. "This one's for you." Miguel smiled, eyes blurring with tears. A young journalist named Nora wrote a story about bridge hours. She opened it with the tale of an unnamed mother and a yellow post-it note. The article spread like wildfire. Mayors in 12 cities signed commitments. A new open-source app launched Bridge, allowing workers to donate unused hours to one another. Companies matched. A community fund filled the gaps. Nora interviewed Hannah, but Hannah kept her name private. She didn't want to be a symbol. She only mentioned Miguel. "If you had to name the person who started it all," Nora asked. "Who would you name?" "Miguel," Hannah said. "He's the reason I believe this is more than a hashtag." Nora tracked down Miguel. He avoided the camera. "I just swapped a shift," he said. But at the end of the interview, he showed Nora his old phone, its screen cracked. On it was a WhatsApp group of hundreds of night shift janitors coordinating shift swaps so no one would lose their job when a loved one fell ill. "We don't have much," Miguel said, "but we have each other." 2 years passed. Bridge hours was no longer breaking news. It became routine. People no longer debated, do we really need 72 hours of paid leave? They asked instead, how do we expand this to freelancers? The Aurora Fund began investing in local adaptations. In New Orleans, bridge hours came with emergency finance classes for single parents. In Boise, it included access to a mental health support hotline. Ethan's hair had grown back. He rode his bike through the park sometimes, glancing up at the bright white hospital roof as if looking at an old mountain he'd once climbed. Hannah returned to work not at her old company, but at a small non-profit writing policy in words that weren't fancy but solid. Victor. The man who once despised anything soft became an unexpected voice, a CEO who now said, "Let people have time to love each other when it matters." Some mocked him for his post-storm morality. He didn't flinch. "Yes," he said. "After the storm, I learned how to swim." One autumn evening in a grand hall in Seattle, people gathered to honor those who had helped make bridge hours a global movement. Hannah sat in the fourth row wearing a simple blue dress, heart pounding like the roll call days in school. Ethan sat beside her legs, swinging. On stage, Nora, the journalist, read aloud, "Kindness is not the favor of the strong toward the weak. It is the bridge we build together. So when one side collapses, the other can still reach out." They named donors, mayors, union leaders. Then the MC said, "Finally, we'd like to honor the man who quietly began the night shift network, who turned hours spent mopping floors into hours that built bridges. Please welcome Mr. Miguel Alvarez." A spotlight shone on the back row empty. Nora stepped forward, voice softening. "Miguel passed away last month from an unexpected illness." The room went silent as if someone had cut the music mid-dance. Hannah gripped her son's hand. On the screen appeared a blurry photo, Miguel's smiling hand raised as if to say, "No one should be alone." Behind her, someone began to cry. She didn't turn around. She knew that sound. It had once been hers. The MC continued. "His family couldn't be here tonight, but they sent a letter." Nora opened the envelope. Inside were just 13 words. "If I was once allowed to stay, let others be allowed to stay." After the ceremony, Nora found Hannah in the hallway. "There's something I left out of the article," Nora said, glancing around like she feared someone might overhear. "It's about the Aurora Fund." Hannah raised an eyebrow. Aurora, the biggest anonymous donor, had always refused to reveal their identity. "What about it?" Nora handed her a document. At the bottom of the page was a name blurred over many times but still legible, Victor Hale. Hannah looked up at Nora, her eyes filled with surprise and something else. Not quite anger. "Him," Nora nodded. "I confirmed it through 4 sources. He asked to stay anonymous, didn't want it to look like PR. But there's more." She lowered her voice. "I found an old internal email between Victor and Halewell's HR department, dated 2.5 years ago. Subject line 72 hours, make it policy now." And underneath he wrote, "A yellow post-it just answered for me." Hannah stepped back, leaning against the wall. She remembered the yellow note. She remembered the sun-worn hand. She remembered someone once helped me. "Are you going to publish it?" Hannah asked. Nora hesitated. It's a twist that could blow up the man once seen as cold, turns out to be the main donor. And this top-down movement, it actually began with a janitor's floor shift. It's shocking and beautiful. But what do you think? Hannah was quiet. On the other side of the wall, the MC announced the next award recipient. Music swelled. Ethan rested his head on her shoulder. At last, Hannah said, "If it's just a shock story, it'll burn out fast. But if it helps people see that kindness flows both ways, then tell it. Say a yellow post-it changed a gray man's mind. But also say if there hadn't been a janitor named Miguel, neither he nor I would be any different today." Nora nodded, eyes glistening. "I'll write it that way." Nora's article hit the front page on Monday morning. The internet erupted. Some were furious, some were moved, some were skeptical. "Media whitewashing," a CEO someone tweeted. "This is why I believe in public policy," another replied. In the middle of the noise, small stories dropped like rain. A delivery driver shared how his shift was covered when his wife went into labor. A cashier said bridge hours saved her from getting fired when her mother had a stroke. A manager admitted the new policy had made his team more loyal, more human. Victor read the article in the kitchen, 2 cups on the table, one for him, one for Laura. He saw the praise, he saw the outrage, he didn't respond. Instead, he called Nora. "Thank you for writing both halves," he said. "I just wrote the truth," Nora replied. "No," Victor said, voice slower, softer than people were used to. "You wrote how truth is made by hands no one remembers the names of." He hung up, looked at Laura, and smiled. She placed her hand on his. "You've changed," she said. "No," he said, shaking his head gently. "You changed me." That November was heavy with rain. Hannah was biking Ethan to school when under the eaves of the building, she saw a young woman standing alone, silently crying, phone pressed to her ear. Hannah stopped. "Are you okay?" I just found out my dad had a stroke. In Texas." "I don't know how to tell my boss," the girl said, her voice tearing like ripped paper. Hannah started to say, "There's bridge hours," but then remembered not everywhere had it yet. She asked for the name of the woman's company, pulled out her phone, and opened the Bridge Finder page. "Here," she said, pointing. "There's a sample letter and a legal help hotline. I'll walk with you to your manager's office if you want. I can't promise anything, but I can promise you won't be alone." The woman looked at her the way someone looks at a boat just reaching shore as the waters rise. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Hannah thought of the yellow post-it, of the green sticker on Miguel's shirt, of the hospital posters, of the stage curtain lifting and a name being called of someone now gone. She thought of a gray man who changed color. "Because someone once did it for me," Hannah said, "and now it's my turn." That night after Ethan had fallen asleep, Hannah sat down to write a letter for the When You Grow Up box. She believed he would grow up, believed it with a kind of quiet, unshakable faith. "Dear Ethan, someday you'll see the name Bridge Hours somewhere and not know that it began as a yellow post-it note. You'll hear people argue over who deserves credit. Don't worry. Truth lasts longer than honor. You'll meet people who think kindness is weakness. You can show them the bridges. A bridge doesn't ask how strong the wind is, it just stands so someone can cross. And if you ever ask what changed the world, I'd say, not a hero, but a chain of ordinary people doing small things at the right moment. A 12-word question. A janitor. A CEO who felt shame at the right time. A journalist who told both sides. And a kid who liked stickers. If you ever need a plot twist to tell your friends, tell them this. Turns out the strongest force wasn't the command of the powerful, but a note from someone unnamed. And somehow even the powerful can learn to listen. With love, Mom. Hannah folded the letter. Outside, the rain at the window had become a steady lullaby. 3 years from now, Bridge Hours will be written into law in 8 states and adopted under different names around the world. Horas de Puente, Uren, Der Brücke, Geobach. The Bridge app will have 10 million users. People will no longer remember who wrote the first 12 words, who placed the first sticker, who made the first donation. And maybe that's the truest sign of success. When kindness has traveled so far, it no longer needs a footnote. Nora will stand on a bridge over a riverbank, thinking about the first article that ever made her cry while writing. Victor will speak at a university, telling students how a soft policy saved a hard company. Laura will walk short distances without her cane. Ethan will kick a soccer ball past the chalk line, shouting like he's yelling into a canyon. And Hannah, she'll keep doing what she does best, writing words that aren't fancy but solid, and standing at the threshold whenever someone needs to cross a broken stretch. Kindness is not a favor. It is the right to stay beside one another when it matters. When we turn that into policy, we free kindness from the grip of luck. Change rarely begins on a stage. It often begins in hospital hallways, on janitorial shifts, on yellow post-it notes. People can change, even the ones we think can't. Sometimes all it takes is a good question and a hit straight to the heart. The best plot twists aren't shocks. They're the ones that make us believe tomorrow can be different from today if we do one small kind thing and do it together. When night falls, we turn on the lights. When life falls apart, we turn to each other. And sometimes a personal crisis, a moment of fear, a small note, a simple question is enough to ignite a shared dawn. If you're holding a yellow post-it in your pocket, don't think it's too small. Write on it, stick it up, let someone stay.